As soon as you enter in the old city, La Città Vecchia, you can see a huge graffiti that reads "ILVA has killed my mother." So there are protests every day. There are again organization of parents who lost their children because of the toxic environment that the plant and the steel production has created.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Sense of a Place, the podcast that speaks about the concept of place in capitalism or about place from an infrastructural perspective. Today, we're joined by Letizia Bonanno in Italy to chat with us about the steel plant in Taranto and other steel plants in Europe. We are very excited, so let's get started. Letizia is a social anthropologist and illustrator living and working between Lyon and Taranto. Her research traces the afterworlds and aftermaths of industrial citizenship in Taranto and Galați, in Italy, respectively Romania, driven by an uncanny fascination with steel factories, their infrastructure, and the political and ideological worlds that sustain them. Welcome, Letizia, and thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for inviting me to join you.
So, Letizia, let's begin. What is ILVA, the steel plant, and what does it produce?
ILVA today is known and called by everyone as ex-ILVA, and it has historically produced steel and lots of pollution and death.
Why was it built in Taranto?
So the reasons are multiple, but mostly the establishment of the plant in the southern region of Puglia was meant to create employment, to pacify social tensions, and most importantly, to bridge the gap, economic and industrial gap between the north of the country and the south regions. So it was supposed to be the most effective economic drive for industrialization and modernity.
Who manages the plant?
Nowadays, the plant is managed by Acciaierie d'Italia, a private-public partnership between ArcelorMittal and Invitalia, a kind of a state agency.
Is it true that it was placed under special administration?
It is very true indeed. It was placed under special administration. Actually, it was grounded in 2012 after a huge environmental scandal surfaced. Out of various mismanagement of the plant.
And now is the factory still operating? Is it working at full capacity?
The plant is still operating today, but not at full capacity.
And what happens with the workers who are laid off?
So most of them are on furlough or are rehired on short-term precarious contracts, mostly to meet the demands of the steel market on a very symptomatic basis, basically.
And how many people are still working at home?
All in all, about 8,000 workers are working in the plants at various capacity and on different, mostly again short-term and precarious contracts.
And does the plant have an environmental impact?
Well, yes, the plant has historically had a devastating environmental impacts and also a very negative health impacts. Pretty much since its very opening.
Could you give
Even
an
though the
example, maybe, of such an impact?
Yeah, of course. So in terms of public health, Taranto is the city with the highest incidence of cardiovascular disease and cancer in Italy. Those are, I guess, the most telling indicators of the environmental impacts of the plant on the environment, but also on people's health.
What does it mean for the citizens to have such a large plant, basically in the city?
Well, I think that people experience and perception of the plant in the city has changed over time, because at the very beginning, when the plant was opened in the 1960s, basically, it was a source of employment and wealth. So people were kind of okay with having a plant in the city. Things have started changing in the early 2010, when the first environmental reports came out and the long-term effects of toxicity and pollution start becoming apparent evidence in public health and indicators, and also on the degradation of the environment.
What are the citizens' positions regarding ILVA or ex-ILVA, as you named it?
So people have different understandings and different positions about the future of the plant. So many organizations, civil society initiatives call for a definitive closure of the plant. I think other people are just more cautious, aware that closing down the plant would mean an economic loss for the city. So yeah, there is not a unique position that people have about the plant. So I guess it's the old and classic dilemma between health and environment and employment, and this is pretty much what has been this dilemma has been informing many of the protests and mobilization in the city since like the 2010.
A very important issue related to the factory. Where do you see that people are afraid of the factory's effects on their health?
Well, as soon as you enter in the old city, La Città Vecchia, you can see a huge graffiti that reads "Ilva has killed my mother." So there are protests every day. There are again organization of parents who lost their children because of the toxic environment that the plant and the steel production has created. And I guess this is a quite strong indicator of how much people are afraid and worried about their health and about the impacts that the production, steel production, has had and will have on them.
But the trade unions from the factory now are organizing strikes or protests or doing anything relating to this environmental issue.
Well, this is a very important and difficult question, in the sense that the trade unions have a very ambiguous status in Taranto, because they are sometimes associated with like basically not protecting any more workers and their interests and their health, but they've been somehow accused of selling off the workers to the managers, to the capital, to the owner of the factory, il padrone. So, let's say it's more these grassroots organizations that organize protests and trying to health-related issues central to the discussion on the future of the factory, not really the trade unions.
Are the city dwellers organizing or mobilizing
Oh yes,
against this health problem?
yeah, definitely. They've been doing that since 2012 mostly, and the mobilization became bigger and more consistent over the past summer, because right now the future of the factory is being discussed, and so there are different plans that have been made by the government and different private investors, but none of them really considers the environmental aspect of reopening the plant, the side effects on the environment, the side effects of reopening the plant and put it to work at its full capacity. So yes, there's a lot of grassroots mobilization going on in the city right now.
What would happen if ILVA were permanently closed?
I don't know. I don't really know, and I don't want to fall into the trap of considering the factory as the only source of livelihoods for people. It's very difficult to say, but I can say that some people in Taranto, actually, the majority think that closing down the ILVA and investing on tourism and infrastructure would somehow prevent the economic collapse of the city once the factory closes down. And of course, I think that tourism is the solution for the economic crisis is a problematic statement, and it's a problematic reality as well.
In 2022, the UN designated Taranto a sacrifice zone due to the severe air pollution from the steel plant. What concrete effects does this designation produce?
Well, I didn't even know that the EU designated Taranto as a sacrifice zone, which is, by the way, a term that somehow Robert Bullard created to indicate those areas where residents and often low-income and minority communities live and are disproportionately exposed to pollution and environmental hazards. I'm not sure, actually, whether this designation has had any concrete effects. Probably it is something that people can possibly leverage to contest state policies or state plans to reopen the plants. But again, I've never heard anyone, any person. I mean, the people I met, referring to Taranto as a sacrifice zone.
And how do you think it was possible that the Italian state carried out some brutal policies in the region that was already relatively poor?
Well, I think that the logic with which the state operated in the mid 50s was exactly that of creating employment and industrial modernity. And that's exactly the reason why the state decided to establish the plant in this area, in that specific area and region. Many Italian intellectual scholars describe this kind of initiatives as cathedral in the desert, meaning that they establishing a plant like today's ILVA in such place was, not pretty useless, but something with an unlimited purchase. It's just like there's nothing else around, and a plant alone cannot quite trigger the economic development of a region. I mean, assuming this is kind of economic determinism that industries can necessarily improve the economy, or at least like bring some sort of modernity.
One final question, Letizia. In September, Liberty, the employer in Galați, has just laid off 3,000 employees, while the rest of the employees are on furlough. Basically, the plant's activities are frozen now. What parallels and what differences can you draw between the two plants?
Well, I think that the similarities I could somehow capture or perceive are very much about the imaginations and the perceptions that these plants still trigger in many people in the residents. And of course, another important similarity, for me at least, is about this very uneasy, controversial relationship between the state and the steel factory. In a way, I like to think of steel as a very ideological material that the states in different historical times like mobilized and molded to discuss or to implement various politics, industrial policies, and political plans. So in this sense, I think like the case of Taranto and Galați are rather similar. Differences, I guess, are pretty obvious in the sense that the plans were established out of very different political ideologies or political trajectories. But I think what matters right now is that those divergent different political trajectories basically have been skewed by capitalism. So both plants are in dire crisis. The production of steel has been dislocated in the global south, and yet there's a number of workers that still gravitate around these steel plants, hoping to get some work out of that.
Letizia, thank you very much for answering our questions.
Thank you for asking me those questions.